something popped out of the void and consumed Josh, so session's canceled. Jump scare warning. We're talking about horror today. With me are Isaiah.
Hello.
And Matt.
Oh.
So when I specifically say horror, I'm more talking about setting horror than like, for instance, like, oh, that's body horror monster over there. Like that's part of it, but I'm more concerned about hearing your thoughts on setting horror, because I as horror being one of my favorite genres, I always try to look for, some way I can, squeeze that in. However, many other people have had the same idea, and I've looked at their ideas of horror and how you can translate it to a tabletop, and it's often either disappointing or just the same thing.
Sam,
yeah.
Is this because RE4 came out?
No, actually, this is just because horror is always there on my brain.
Fair enough.
Metal. Yeah. Some of those lines are in, some of them are not.
What?
Yeah.
Which ones did they take out?
I think the quiet chanting that the cultists have.
No, they don't do the go hello.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing that at all.
Damn it! Do they still do muere?
Playthroughs? I think so. I know they kept a few of them in because Japanese fans were like, "LOL, that sounds like a stupid Japanese phrase."
Yeah, it just os foi rompiendo pesados. Yeah,
I understood what that meant. Anyway, I had my partner translating for me the whole time I was playing again, so it's fine.
Yes.
It was funny because she was like, "Yeah, it's not less terrifying when you understand what they say." And I went, "Huh? Glad to hear it." Anyway, so I guess I'll start off light, and you may not have an answer for me because this is fairly specific to the horror genre. But what is your preferred types of horror? And I'm talking like eldritch horror, cryptid, serial killer, slasher kind of deal. Grimdark, bad times is what I wrote down in my notes. Atmospheric.
I mean, that is one of
psychological. Those are all types of horror. If you don't know what I mean by those, like, I can elaborate.
So I like dread. I like the feeling that the bad thing is right around the corner, and the bad thing doesn't always have to be the monster.
Yeah.
It's funny. If anyone ever watched the what's it called? My brain, please. Geek and Sundry, when they did the Dread game, and for anybody who doesn't know how Dread works, Dread is like a narrative-based, rules light RPG that tells a scary story. And anytime something harrowing comes up, you have to pull from like a Jenga tower. And the idea is that like the more complicated or more dangerous the thing is, the more blocks you have to pull from the tower. And eventually that creeping dread comes in when you finally drop the tower, something really bad happens. That's my favorite shit. And it does actually tie in with Grimdark really well, because not to steal this from you, Sam, but like the thing that I think people don't understand about Grimdark is that Grimdark is not everything sucks all the time, everything is just awful. It's that at the end of the day, it won't be a happy ending. So you can have a lot of like really fun and like brevity and funny moments, but as long as at the end you end it going, fuck, that's like perfect Grimdark. Yeah, Grimdark does that really well. I just finished Plague War from the Era Indomitus series for 40k. And the ending made me go, fuck. The character that you loved for the whole series turns out to be kind of a crazy zealot, and then the Living Saint chick, she's not chick, she's like 14, explodes in a glorious hail of Emperor light and kills a bunch of demons. And one of the demons one of the demons is a great unclean one. And he's like fighting them, and a bunch of Sisters of Silence rock up. And for anyone who doesn't know 40K, a Sister of Silence can destroy psychic abilities by their presence. So if they kill a demon, that demon dies forever. When they don't, usually they just go back to the warp and then they can remanifest. And they scared the demon so hard that he shat himself and cut his own head off. He like, and then just fucking decapitated himself so he could go back to the warp. And everybody looked at him like, what a bitch you are. You're a great unclean one. What a loser.
Damn.
Yeah, like the main great unclean one's like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
Pretty good. That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Matt, have any thoughts?
Yeah. This is gonna kind of be weird, but I actually don't like horror.
That's fine. You can be a baby back bitch. It's okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've had this problem with a lot of exes who loved watching horror movies and then being like,
you don't need to watch horror movies. Like, so the thing about horror that I'll let you finish in a second, Matt. It's just the thing that I like about horror is that it tends to be better at exploring parts of humanity than any other genre. Like liminal spaces are a big thing that we like. It's just how we become uncomfortable about things. Like, so like, you go to a diner at 3 a.m. and there's just you and the one waitress and the one cook. Generally, you don't feel comfortable in that situation, and a lot of horror relies on that uncomfortability and that little bit in the back of your mind that doesn't feel quite right when you're doing something. Anyway, continue, Matt.
No, I was gonna say, as someone with a very overactive imagination, loves drawing, cartoons, writing, all that shit. Horror gets into the parts that I don't like thinking about. And then, as soon as I get there, my mind starts wandering and the ideas won't stop. So I try not to watch a lot of horror. But I guess the only thing I could really think of is like where I kind of dip my toes in a little bit is dark fantasy. Because it's taking that fantasy element and kind of warping it into a little bit of horror.
Yeah. That's why I included grimdark, because it's kind of that. And also eldritch horror is a little bit like, it's not the ghosts I guess I should have included supernatural, like the Ring or fucking the Halloween movies or anything like that. It's just like, oh hey, there's something wrong here and we don't know what it is. So fun fact, Matt, I used to be the same exact way. Hyperactive imagination. I literally could not sleep. This is probably what caused my massive insomnia from the ages of 4 to 12, properly, because I had watched Gremlins.
Fair enough.
Gremlins. The scene where the teacher reaches under the desk and gets fucking murdered, that broke me as a child. I was like, I'm never gonna be able to reach under an object without a light again. So I get where you're coming from, but I've grown past that and grown to love horror, probably because I'm just, I don't know, over traumatized. Smile.
Well, so you know what fucked me up as a kid?
What?
The Twilight Zone episode with the dude on the plane. There's the gremlin on the plane wing.
Yeah.
That fucked me up when I was a kid. Not the like, because there's the really dopey one where it's like the dude in the fucking sheepwool suit. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the Twilight Zone movie from 1983, where that thing is just actual fucking horror fuel. That ruined me for like a month straight. I honestly, so I'm with you, Matt, because I'm not very good with horror movies, but I do like other horror media. Like I like horror stories a lot. Like I actually listen to, I guess this is kind of like a weird shout out, but a guy named Roanoke Gaming. He has like a scary stories channel, He's doing like real horror now, which I'm not as big a fan of because I don't really care about the like true crime stuff. I care more about like the actual scary stories bit. But he's got some really bangers back, like that old ones. I just listen to him all at work, and then I'm like, woohoo. You know, scary stories can't do it. I'm a bitch.
Yeah. I think I've seen most horror shit, again, like movies. Most of them I've seen have been like, you know, slashers. But like the terrible ones, like Jason X.
Oh, you mean
Like,
which horror movies?
Not even horror at that point. It's just
I mean, like
zombie goes to space.
So there's also like there's a movie called Ghost Ship, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a horror movie. I'm sure every time I mention this, someone knows what it is.
Yep.
My sister was obsessed with this movie as a kid. My sister loved. She was the one that watched horror movies from the early fucking age. So that was a movie she had on repeat constantly, and I'm like, I hate hanging out with you when you watch this.
I think the funny part is that I started that movie and it was in Italian and there was no subtitles, so I'm just like, did I start the wrong movie? No,
the ghost is haunted.
It's just the first ship. The first scene is just entirely in Italian.
Sorry. When the first time I watched the first scene of Ghost Ship, I was like 11, and that also traumatized the shit out of me. And then I went back and watched it several years later, not knowing that it was the same movie, and I didn't realize. But the best moment is when it happened, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fucking brutal." And then I went into like a fugue state where I was like, "Oh, this is the movie from back then that scared the fuck out of me."
Yeah,
so good.
Understandable. Yeah. Okay. So we have the unfortunate, you know, ending kind of deal. Like it's not all going to be happy, and it's most likely going to end dire type of horror, which is usually what grimdark is. And then Matt just doesn't like horror. Okay. I prefer eldritch, cryptid, psychological, sometimes a mix between all three, sometimes not, it depends. Eldritch is kind of hard to have without the psychological horror because it's supposed to like eldritch horror being literally part of the human psyche and being like, oh, there's old gods and they just fuck with your perception of reality and have a good time with that.
Yeah. So is that the same thing as like cosmic horror?
Yes.
Or no,
yes. Yeah. It's different word, same thing. You know, old gods, you know, from space, you know, just doing their little space magic, you know.
And I just
little guys doing space magic.
So I don't actually like cosmic horror that much, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because whenever a character goes crazy and starts doing dumb shit in my, because you know, when you read a book, you put yourself in that situation. And I know this is bullshit because there's no way I'd be like this psychologically strong, but I'm like, I would never do that. Never.
I know.
You.
So it's taken me a really long time to get out of that mindset. It's like, well, why did they break? It seems so easy. Just don't, forehead. And then you end up in a situation where it's just like, I could do that. In the back of your brain, I couldn't. I literally couldn't. I don't think I could survive.
No, it's that, and it's like, just leave. Bro, just leave. You're in the middle of Bumble D fuck nowhere, Maine. Just leave.
I said always Maine too.
It is. It is always Maine. And look, I've been to Maine. Maine is really nice. It is the middle of Bumble D fuck nowhere. Like, I remember I went there for a while to do some blacksmithing. I was a blacksmith for a month. I don't know if I ever brought that up.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah. I spent there a month with a buddy of mine, and we were just blacksmithing. It was really fun. He lived on like this abandoned road with like 5 acres of land. So at night you're just sitting there. And he had like, his room was like, not the attic, but it was like the top floor was basically one whole room. And you could hear everything outside. Included like bats that are like tinking against the window, and I'm sitting there on a fucking mattress on the floor being like, this could be where I die.
Yeah, I have I spent 2 weeks in what basically equated to a lean-to in Maine, in like a swamp. those floors, like the reason why I say it equates to a lean-to is because the walls were not very well done, or at least old as fuck. And the same thing with the floors, like you could just see through them. It was a time. I do not do well with forests. Like I love camping, but at night I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna sit in that sleeping bag, I'm gonna sit in that tent, and I'm gonna go to sleep as soon as fucking possible because I will stay up late. And by late, I mean tomorrow afternoon and then pass out.
Yeah, I'd be the guy being like, hey guys, I'm gonna just put more logs on the fire, grab flamethrower, make sure that it's as bright as possible.
Yeah.
I think this is good. I think we're gonna be warm tonight.
I will say the good thing about being in Maine where we were, but so what we were, like I said, we were blacksmithing, so we were working with blades all day. And we also went shopping at old antique stores because Maine's got a bunch of really cool antique shops where you can get like Civil War era weaponry. So I have a Spanish cavalry saber from 1904. I just slept with that next to me, and I'm like, at least I'm going out with a fight.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I do have to say that one of my favorite things about horror is the adrenaline, though. I'm just like, I don't want to be in the situation with the horror, I would rather be far separated from it and maybe get the adrenaline through other means, like playing, a horror game.
Yeah, I mean, that's why most people like horror, right? Because you get that adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I like the exploration of the human psyche and the adrenaline rush. If it's going to be something like, I don't like action horror. I'm gonna be honest. It kind of ruins the experience of the genre.
What if I just fight the predator?
No. As soon as okay, and
wait, is the Predator a horror movie?
Yes.
Or is it supposed to be action?
It's an action
okay.
Horror. It's so here's the thing. So it follows horror movie rules. Horror movie rules dictate that the killer or whatever is not able to be killed until after the second act. You cannot kill him until the third act has started, which is exactly what happens in Predator. It also is that atmospheric kind of psychological feeling of, hey, I am being hunted right now. This is not fun. I wish to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that Predator is at least horror adjacent, even if it leans a little bit more actiony.
Yeah.
But like it definitely is that I can't win feeling. So a lot of people also that's another reason why people don't like horror, or at least horror games, since you can't kill the monster. And I'm like, I get it, but like that's a fucking 8-foot odd slab of meat with advanced weaponry, and I'm just a little guy,
You're not Halo John, not to be confused with John Halo. Like, you can't just fight every
I can't just fight that. I don't have military. I mean, I do, but like that's besides the point.
I don't have power armor and an energy sword.
Speaking of the military training, so one of the big changes that I really liked from Resident Evil 7 to Resident Evil 8 is that Ethan in Resident Evil 7 had zero idea how to handle his weapons, like at all. And then in Resident Evil 8, they made him like they talk about how he went through a few months of training and then they just shipped him off to fucking Europe. And now it reflects in his animations that he's actually just better at using weaponry. It's very nice. Very good touch.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because he didn't just get normal training. He got trained by a spec op.
Yeah.
We talk about how fucking Chris is special forces, which is weird. He's special forces, but he's still Air Force, or he's former Air Force.
Former Air Force, then Special Forces Cobb, then just Special Forces.
Yeah.
God, now you're making me remember that movie we watched.
Which one?
The
one
where he rode the elevator on his fucking motorcycle to drive it into the fucking monster.
And
when he fucking power bombs and choke slams the zombies.
Good movie. Resident Evil movies are great.
They are. The animated ones are fantastic.
They completely. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I forget that the live action ones exist.
Wait. First two live action ones are great. I will hear nothing about that. Everything else can get in the bin.
They're fine.
The third one, I didn't see the fourth one at all. I kind of was I got halfway through the third one and I walked away. I was like, all right, I fucking.
So I've watched them all, by the way. The fourth one is better than the third one, and it's better than the fifth one, but it's.
There was a fifth one?
Yeah. Oh, well, no. So okay, so
Really?
it's like 2 for me. It's like 2, 1, 4, 5, 3, everything else.
Really?
I've watched them all a million times.
What about the new Netflix show?
It's so bad. I've never seen
It's
it.
bad. It's
And you're welcome. You're welcome.
Matt,
I brought that.
I've watched 3 episodes and I couldn't continue, and I had to like. Okay, look, I'm pretty bad at watching TV shows, but I'm good at getting through an episode. I fell asleep every time I started watching this show because nothing happens, and when something does happen, I'm like, I know they're taking liberties, but like that's just bad.
How did they do this to me? I tried. Lance Reddick was in it. I gave it the good old college try. My boy Lance motherfucking I wish I would LeVar Burton Reddick was in it.
I
couldn't do it. I couldn't. Like every part he was in, I'm like, this is the best. This is the best the show will be. And he's not in it for 3/4 of the show.
No, he's not.
Wait,
and he's not even
Yo.
Wesker. He doesn't even have the fucking trench coat on. Like he's
No, he has it for one scene.
Yeah.
One, and he looks like Blade.
Yeah. They made a mistake with that one. I'm not saying this is about race, but like when you have a character that looks exactly like has the same exact costume as the white guy, and then you make a black guy put that on, and then it's just get the same character. People are going to assume that he looks like Blade because he looks like Blade. He doesn't look like Wesker anymore.
Would the first 2 Blade movies count as that action horror? Or are those just action?
Yeah, so that's
the first one is definitely action horror.
The third one's like
what I'm
just
kinda
action.
getting at is that like once you get too far into the action, you immediately lose the horror elements because it's like.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna tell you. Like people would be like, oh, the Morbius is horror. It's kind of like
it has action horror elements.
Exactly. Like if you basically made the whole movie like after basically how the scene was when he first transformed quote unquote,
Morbin
became a vampire, whatever. Then sure, that would be horror. But only if you put it from the perspective of other people. Like it's so close because he goes through something after that scene, and then it just kind of there.
I still haven't watched Morbius.
I watched.
I need to get real. We need to do like a drink night.
I also watched it on a plane.
Watch it.
And I genuinely.
Go ahead.
I watched it on the way to Colorado. I watched it over somebody's shoulder, and they had subtitles on it. I watched damn near the whole thing over someone's shoulder, which compromised viewing. But I literally watched it and went, "Wow, I will never watch this movie of my own volition sober ever again." I'll watch it drunk, but I'm gonna have to already be drunk when we start it.
Yeah, I want to have a drinking game associated with it. That's the only way I'm gonna watch it without like
I don't think I can
shitting on it every 5 seconds.
No, I want to shit on it though. Just like Matt, how are you gonna say you wouldn't shit on it when you shit on the entirety of the Halo show drunk?
True. Yeah. Actually, fair point.
Yeah.
Anyway, to bring
also
this back,
side note,
I'll make
Tenet
zombies
sucks.
to make it
All right.
fanatic.
Anyways, back to.
Bring this back. And this kind of goes with what I was saying, like about action horror and how it kind of takes away that feel. How well do you think horror translates to a TTRPG? Because unless it's done really well, like the first few encounters of Strahd where it's stressful because like you could just die at any moment, because it's otherworldly powers and you're not that strong. I have not had a good experience with it unless it's something like Dread, where it's like the whole point of the game is the horror.
Do you want to go first, Isaiah? Or?
Well, yeah. So I struggle with this because I've done horror in my own setting, and there has to be a level of It's not. It's close to suspension of disbelief. It's something similar. I don't know what the word would be, but like you sort of have to like let yourself on some level be afraid. Because like I've played in 3 games now where horror was like the point, and at no point was I afraid. And I think partially it has to do with the fact that in a game with rules, right? Mm-hmm. There is a implicit understanding that you and whoever's running the game have rules that they play by. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing by the rules, that usually means that things can't just kill you, because at that point it's not a game anymore. There's no interactivity.
Yep.
So you can feel pretty safe knowing that you won't just explode. And some games like early Curse of Strahd, you can hit a bad trap and just fucking explode, and you're like, well, that's not scary. That's just annoying, you know?
Yep.
Dread, I think, is really good because the rule is that there's no real rules. Like the rule is something happens, pull a block. Eventually, it falls apart. So that I feel like I could very easily get genuinely afraid in, but at least, and this is not me shitting on 5e. 5e is not a game built for horror.
I absolutely agree. One of the things that I kept thinking about when I was thinking about this topic was when people tried to make their own homebrew rules to make 5e horror. I'm forgetting the exact one that's like I've seen promoted a million. Thank you, Grimhollow.
Grimhollow, yeah.
That's like it's so hard to make 5th edition into a horror game because they have rules for it, quote unquote. Like they have the sanity rule that everyone always forgets about because it's just like honor. Why would you use it? Because it just makes the game more complicated in a way that doesn't really help anybody. So like, yeah, I absolutely agree that 5th edition especially is not good for horror. There are games that are better for it, but like 5th edition is not it.
Yeah,
I will.
If you want like action horror, then do it in 5e, but not. Again, the horror aspects aren't going to be
losing the horror aspect of it because
that's what I'm saying. Like you can do like. It also depends on what level. Because I would just say, even with Grimhollow,
lower level.
Even with Van Richten's guide, once the characters get to level 10, then it's like, I can just shoot laser beams out of my fingers and fucking kill whatever.
The second that you hit level 5, it's you lose a lot of it. Like it's there, but like the tension's gone.
Yeah, the second you get 3rd level spells, a lot of it comes to an end real quick.
All right, so that creature that took Josh into the void apparently released him. So, session's still canceled because it's been like half an hour and all the prep's out the window. But he's back. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Greetings. I have arrived. That creature was a bitch. I ate his dick.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, like sexually or?
No. Like I cooked it up in a frying pan, little olive oil, little salt and pepper, seared the outside, threw it in the oven to bake for finish off,
Grab his dick
reminds
and
me of a
twist it.
specific cannibal.
Huh?
What?
Cannibals?
Yeah. There's a cannibal that paid a guy to eat his dick.
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Hey, who's in so Grimhollow?
Yeah. Anyway, Grimhollow.
If you're doing horror in 5e, it's going to be action. Like unless you like. Yeah. Just be like, you guys can't. You can't play spellcasters or whatever, or you can only play like half casters or something.
You're still. Even if you're just marshals, you're pretty beefy.
Yeah, like it's like especially after level 5, it's like level 4. You're like, okay, there's I'm vulnerable, but I'm not gonna die outright. 5th edition is I'm not vulnerable. I will kill anything you throw at me unless it's like 10 CR higher than it should be.
Yeah.
Which is not how you should do horror in your tabletop because that's just not fun.
Yeah.
Dicking over your players is just not fun.
I will say there also is in Candlekeep Mysteries. There's one of the adventures in there. I forgot what it's called. Something the Shimshine. It's basically a horror adventure. I'm butchering the name of the monster. But it's all about solving this mystery in order to defeat the monster that is basically unkillable unless you do these specific tasks and solve these specific problems and mysteries. Because like you can attack the monster, you can blast it with fireball all you want. It ain't gonna do shit. I think that could be another thing of just like you have to solve the problem of the monster.
So like a Mr. X situation.
Yeah,
Where you can stun them like until you do something very specific. You do not kill this creature.
Right.
Sure.
So I'm gonna make a bold statement.
Yeah.
I think the only way to effectively do horror in a TTRPG is you need to be rules minimal.
Yeah.
And when I mean minimal, I mean like dread level minimal. Because I just like, even Powered by the Apocalypse, I feel like you'd have to make it really tailored to horror. And even then, because of how open the move system is, I feel like you could still make an argument that you could reasonably fight back in a horror system in Powered by the Apocalypse.
Well, no, what you would do in a Powered by the Apocalypse horror game, which I'm sure they exist, is you would just tailor the moves.
Seen a few.
Huh?
I'm pretty sure I've seen a few. So
probably.
Yeah.
You would tailor the moves around the horror theme. You would just rewrite the moves to be horror themed and make them.
Well, I think
you
run into the problem
where darker, or
I think you run into the problem where you end up tailoring them so much that I think you'd lose a level of the openness that Powered by the Apocalypse sort of specializes in.
No, you don't have to, because a move doesn't have to be a move. Can be. The thing about moves in Powered by the Apocalypse is that oh no, I'm in the void.
All I got from that was I'm in the void. God, I wish I had that on the master recording. We'll let Josh recover from his robotitis. And I'll talk about something that I do think is important to think about. So I do consider Vampire the Masquerade to be horror because like it has all of these elements where you're a vampire, sure, and you could play, a better story. But it's very much so grimdark, where there's no happy endings for anybody, and there's going to be fucked up things that happen. And it's not my favorite type of horror. But Vampire the Masquerade is definitely one of those games that it's like, hey, look, you are the horror, to put it lightly. So like, because you are basically the nightmare for somebody else. It is that horror, but you're just from a different perspective. There's also Call of Cthulhu, which I think is okay. It has that you're just a dirt farmer vibe going on for it, and everything else is a wizard with a gun. So like, good luck, have fun, don't die, you will. Which is like, depending on your players, can be a great time for horror or just playing in general. And if your players are not like into that, I guess you can just go fuck yourself. Yeah. So I do think it's important to think about horror, not just from like I do agree. Again, 5th edition is not the way to do it, because 5th edition has the power fantasy going on the second that you hit level 5. Yeah. Whereas a lot of other games, like if you are like the horrible thing in the night, then like, yeah, it's still horror. It's just that you're not the one partaking in being scared.
Well, so, okay. I have some thoughts about Call of Cthulhu. I haven't played it, so,
yeah,
take this with a pound of salt. I feel like Call of Cthulhu shares something with 5e, where, as far as I'm aware, right, Call of Cthulhu has like madness debuffs that you sort of have to play out in game, right?
Yep.
To me, that's just really fucking annoying. Like, I don't want to have to think about that. I don't want to have to like, because it gets to a point where it's just like, when do you stop functioning? When can like the second you can't get like a message clearly across is when it's like, I just have to sit here and go, I'm just not going to do the thing. I
think eventually your character's just so broken that you have to make a new character, right? Isn't that part of the rules?
So I was going to actually bring in another game that has some horror elements, which is Blaze in the Dark. Blaze in the Dark has a similar system where when you max your stress out, you end up getting a trauma. And yes, it depends. Like Call of Cthulhu, if I remember correctly, has a very specific system for its like mental debuffs or sanity debuffs. I don't know.
It's been so long since I only played it really like as a one shot.
I've looked over the rules maybe twice.
But that sounds familiar. Basically, anytime you do
because
something,
it takes away that player agency. Yeah, I agree. Like it's not exactly something that I like to have in a game. And we talk about that a lot. Like player agency is very important because the second you start taking things like that away is when you start just, making your players resent you and not have fun.
Exactly. Although I'm trying to think about
which is why Blaze in the Dark has that better system, because that trauma is usually something that you decide on. Like you have to take the trauma, but you decide the details.
Right, because that's the thing. If you like talk about it beforehand, if you're playing some sort of game with horror in it,
I'm back.
Hey.
Oh God,
hey,
he's back from the void again. Electric
from the void.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. If you'd like,
I'm in the void.
Yeah,
was so good.
That's pretty great.
Anyway, it's funny though because you came back when I started talking about Blades in the Dark, and Powered by the Apocalypse.
Yeah. So just to quickly finish the thought out, what I was gonna say is no, you don't need to lose any of the because. Yeah, what you're saying, Isaiah, is you want to keep it a little bit vague. You might say vague and evocative when you're doing the horror thing. There's no reason you have to make Powered by the Apocalypse moves hyper specific. A move in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is any kind of statement of ability in any of like. It could be really, really broad. Or really, really specific. So like a move in a Powered by the Apocalypse game could literally be this character cannot be shot. And like that's a move.
Yes.
If you put it on a character sheet, that's a move.
Well,
so like there's nothing requiring you to make any sort of specific bulleted list. So you could make a whole bunch of moves that fit the horror genre without making them too like crunchy or specific or mathy or any of that shit.
Well, so yes, but what I sort of meant is that because Powered by the Apocalypse very specifically gives you like moves that you can do, they're like, for example, if a character wants to play the jock, right, in a horror setting, I could see a move being called Fight Back, right? So, but the issue with a lot of horror, especially in like slasher, is that fighting back categorically doesn't do anything. So you'd have to, you basically have this move that can't really do much. You know what I mean? Like, at some point you just can't fight it.
It doesn't.
Because then it becomes action horror.
Well, what it would be is the move would be Fight Back. On a 10+, you hit Jason really, really hard, and he stumbles for a moment, so you can run.
Yeah, there's always a scene where someone shoots him with a shotgun or makes him trip over a club or something.
The Fight Back, you have the Fight Back roll. Here, let's do it right now. The Fight Back move, 10+, you hit the killer hard enough that they stumble for a moment, and you have a chance to do something. 7 to 9, you hit the killers long enough that they stumble for a moment, but you don't get a chance to get away. You're still stuck with them. Everyone else gets a chance to run away. 6 and below, you smack them and basically nothing happens. Now you're in danger.
A 1, his machete flies towards you, stabs you in the eye.
Yeah,
there's no critical failure, but sure.
No.
Those don't exist generally in Powered by the Apocalypse. Except for very specific, some very specific moves have like a critical like thing.
I will say that the varying levels of success really help to counter the need for something like a critical failure because it already makes it more interesting. I will argue that you can do that in any system. It doesn't necessarily need to be written out for you, but like that's a GM appropriate thing. Not in necessarily the player's hands. Not that it's the dice's hands, but whatever.
You basically would just have to be very conscious of the style of horror you're doing and making sure to write the moves in the fashion that they're always reinforced, like pushing that style. Don't make. You wouldn't give the Ajaka ability that says like you hit the killer and you fucking kill them. Like obviously if you're doing a slasher horror, don't make that move.
Yeah, at that point
you wouldn't. Don't make that be a thing.
You wouldn't do it and like you cause any harm. It's quite literally you just stun them. Like
you stun them. You get a moment of reprieve. maybe you damage them a little bit, depending. Like sometimes in Halloween, sometimes Michael gets a little damaged.
Yeah. Halloween.
Yeah, I don't know. Because then you therefore get into like how many times is someone using this? How viable is it to use in a given moment? Like,
and you just
I
unlock the
feel like you
monster.
get into some weird stuff. Yeah.
So
that problem's solved by the way moves work in general.
I was going to say
because you're always moving the fiction forward.
I was going to say that the DM also, or the ritual masters in this case,
Ritual masters.
It also depends on how they run it, because like, yeah, sure, make trap is going to be better used by the nerd if he succeeds all the time, but like when he doesn't, like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's where the whole pushing the fiction forward situation comes from.
Yeah.
Or adds it. Honestly, I think, and I know I probably say this too much, but I think Powered by the Apocalypse would be a very strong system to do a horror game.
I mean,
for quite a few reasons.
I literally mentioned Blades in the Dark because it has very similar systems to other horror game like Call of Cthulhu with the whole madness and the stressing out and you taking the trauma. It takes those things, and because again moves are like ghosts specifically in Blades in the Dark aren't something you could just straight up kill. Like, you have to be very specifically, hey, we're gonna do this thing to the ghost to get rid of it. Well,
another fun thing with Blades is you could very easily take what already exists in Blades if you want to like crank up the horrorness. Is restrict the number of attribute, or not the restrict the what are they called? The like stats you have, like it's like the crush, or no, what is it? Not crush, smash. You have smash and skirmish, like the abilities, just give them less. Because in Blades you have like 12 or whatever, you could bring it down to 4, so you have less tools to immediately try and deal with the situation. And yeah, the stress mechanic being like obviously easy one to port over. And although you might want to increase, I would say also resistance rolls would be a good thing for the horror vibe too, because the thing where you fight the dude, bad shit happens, you resist and somehow get away, even though Jason probably should have broke your neck.
So I like how we immediately because the original question was how well do you think it translates over, and the next one was how would you, so we're just shifting right over to that. So one of the things that I do think is important about horror games, unless it's like Vampire the Masquerade, where it's that you are the horror.
Vampire is weird because you are Jason.
You are the nightmare. Nightmare, especially Matt's character.
Start.
I do think it's important that there are very few sessions. It should be done in like maybe 2-3 sessions max. Like,
true.
A lot of the other horror games are like supposed to be 1-session games.
Yeah, I think Dread even says should cut it off from at 1 session. Like, I think Dread specifically says like don't go beyond a set. I think, could be wrong, but I think it's
wouldn't surprise me.
Dread, and I will say, having played Dread, although the Jenga-esque, not even the literal Jenga system that Dread uses, is a good horror-inducing thing, and it does help that you feel pretty powerless in Dread, because you don't have any particular fancy tools or anything. But I think Dread takes it too far in that direction, because I remember when I was playing it, I got to a point where I felt like I just kind of sat there and threw my hands up in frustration, because I felt like there was literally nothing I can do. And because I didn't have the ability to look at a character sheet and point to some sort of like piece of equipment, character ability, tool I had, like, so I couldn't point to anything on a character sheet to help me in any way or guide my train of thought. So I got to a certain point where I was like, I literally have zero fucking clue what I'm supposed to do, and I have no guidance on the situation. So I think Dread maybe takes it a little too far for my liking. Well, personally,
maybe I've watched a few actual plays for Dread, including the Geek and Sundry one, and it seems like the intent for Dread is that no matter how dire the situation, as long as you can pull the blocks, you can make it out. And of course, people could not run it like that, but the whole idea, right, is that it's the building thing. If you aren't really supposed to, like, you can fail, obviously, right? Like, you can, based on the narrative, you can maybe not do as well as you wanted to, based on, like, if you struggle to pull a block, for example. But, like,
yeah, it wasn't failure. It was a problem because, yes, I do believe, I don't remember. It's been a minute since I played Dread. It's been a couple of, and by a minute, I mean a few years.
Yes, few.
But if I remember correctly, it is like, yeah, if you could pull a block, it's like you can get out of it, which is true. The problem wasn't failing. The problem was I had gotten into a situation where I had no guidance. And so I didn't know what I was supposed to do in any meaningful way. I felt really listless. Like, I'm just going to sit here and wait for something to happen because I have no other response was the problem. Like, I felt like I had no way of pushing the narrative forward. Like, I'm remembering a particular point with my character where I said to the GM, I'm like, I think my character might just give up at this point. And the GM sort of talked me out of it, out of character. And I forget exactly what we ended up doing, but we sort of went back and forth on it a little bit. But I felt pretty listless because I had nothing from a mechanical standpoint to really grab onto. So I didn't feel like I had any kind of direction to go in. So it wasn't so much a concern of failure, so much as just sitting there kind of dumbfounded.
So I have had a very similar experience. I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again. When I played 4th edition Vampire the Masquerade, but not Vampire the Masquerade, still don't know what was
World
up
of Darkness.
Yeah, World of Darkness. Thank you.
One of the
because of the way the game is designed, where it's very much so, there are very few rules, and the ritual master, the storyteller. There we go.
Storyteller.
The storyteller has literally like full control over everything and can tell you what you can and can't do, even if the paper says otherwise. Because of that, there's a lot it's like, oh, you need to do this very specific thing, and because you haven't figured out that very specific thing, it just kind of
shit out of luck.
It feels shit to play, and it was a pre-written adventure, and we never went back to the game because reasons. It could have been written better, but at the same time, it's hard to get that feeling when the player is completely powerless to do anything. I like rules, aside for the player, because some people are more creative in these scenarios than others, and some are more likely to be, well, shit's fucked, so like guess I'll die? Question mark. It fully depends on the players in a situation where they have full control, which is kind of why it's like, for me, translating horror over, it can be very difficult. It has to.
It's hard.
Like, you have to have, again, I think that you have to have those few sessions, like, again, maximum 3. Having specific characters played like it's a horror movie is also good, so that everybody's like, okay, I've seen a horror movie, I know exactly what this role is supposed to be.
Yeah, like aim for a specific kind of horror is a big thing. Yeah,
like again, porting over horror monsters into like 5th edition. Hey, look, I think that horror monsters are cool. However, like, you're not going to get the same vibe as a Wendigo, like from Until Dawn in 5th edition. Like, that's not going to happen.
And then they made werewolf fucking.
So yeah, you basically. I remember. Brain.
Yeah.
Yep. I have one of those too.
Logan from.
Yep.
Yeah. Ruben Smith. Fuck me. He talked about how to do a Wendigo in 5e, and the simple answer was like, let it teleport around the map, make it immune to nearly all damage, make it do a shit ton of damage, and it like forces all these status effects.
Yep.
Doable, and the experience would probably be very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Asterisk.
So
you cannot rely on it constantly. It's good for like one, maybe two sessions out of like 20.
Yep. So there's that thing again, that limiting the sessions. So so very similar. This is actually related to the Meat Cube story. I used a face spider to basically do that.
Nice.
And one player was in a maze-like area, had no idea what was going on. I let the spider teleport around a little bit. I'm gonna be honest. It was more interesting that way, and it got the player frustrated, but everybody else was like, "Oh boy." So it has to be done for a very short period of time. I agree. Like if you're, especially in like something like 5th edition, like you can't let that thing be around all the time, because then, like maybe like, it appeared for a session, you get out of the forest, and like several sessions later, it just shows up again because you went into another set of woods or something. Like then it's like, oh, now the players have this fear in them that if they go to the woods, they're going to encounter this thing, but like that has to be done very tastefully, and it can't be overdone.
Yeah, I remember I did a big horror thing my first few months in the game that I'm running right now, and the thing that I found that works the best for 5e is just throwing the rules out the window.
Yeah.
Like I mean that so genuinely, like, because the creature's abilities like forced, like, it let off these fungal spores that caused hallucinations. So I just had to be like, okay, well, you see this vision, and then you take damage, and you see this vision, and then you get stunned, and then you see this vision that's worse than those other two, and then nothing happens, and then you see this thing that actually hits you for physical damage, but then it's gone the next moment, and you can't explain it, and nothing you can do about it. And you really have to rely on your players to not be like, this is stupid, I want to go home. Because the second that happens, you're like, well, I have failed.
Yeah.
No one is invested anymore.
Yeah.
It's about how you describe the situation, like as it's happening to them.
Yeah, for me, I managed to make that go 3 sessions, mainly because we started in the second half of one session, like the last hour, and then we had a full session there, and then the third session was the boss fight, and then they left and like handed the thing in. But realistically, that was like a session and a half worth of stuff to do.
Not too many.
Yeah, you really gotta be like spot on with how you fuck with your players, because you're gonna have a player like me who goes, all right, cool, so all these fungal spores, these are all really flammable, I'm just gonna light a match and blow everybody up.
Yeah.
And then you as the DM go, please don't do that, and I go, nope, doing it.
Again, it has to be tasteful. Fucking with your players is definitely something that I do think, again, tastefully done can be good. Like going back to Shroud, because I mentioned at the beginning and how it kind of works until the end. There are a lot of traps that are like not actually traps; they're just horror moments. Like for instance, there's a window in a castle, and I'll bring this up forever because it disappointed me that this didn't actually end up happening. That when you open the blinds to like the window area, you're supposed to see one of the players' heads, and only one player sees it. And y'all opened the other curtains and didn't open the one that triggers the event. And me as the DM could have been like, oh, I could just swap them, you know? Or I could make the curtains flutter, and then you catch sight of like the head of X person, and then like that. And that is also another way to be like, oh, there's some horror stuff going on here. I'm not having a good time. But again, that kind of requires your players to play into it. If your players are not into playing the horror elements, you're shit out of luck, Yeah,
pretty much.
Which is why, like, when I look at Vampire the Masquerade, it is horror, and your players are actively encouraged, if not forced, to play into the horror because you're vampires. If you don't drink blood, you're gonna die. It's just,
well, I think something else
kind of how that is. Yeah, continue.
Sorry. One thing that I think is really interesting about Vampire is that it not only forces you into the horror elements, it forces you into the like dread elements, right? Like,
yeah,
if you fuck up your hunger roll, you need to kill a human. And then on top of it being like a horror thing, it's really good at replicating the, I can't fucking speak today. It's really good at replicating the what have I done elements of a game. Because when you, for, I don't know, just as an example, stab a hobo in the throat with a syringe and kill him horribly for no real reason.
Listen, I just took too much blood, and he had excess amount of blood.
Yeah, excess amount of blood.
It just happens sometimes.
Matt just continued to justify the murder that you did.
That guy that you definitely fucking killed.
And then dumped into the sewers because there were quote unquote crocodiles.
Yeah. Everyone knows in every major city there are alligators in there.
Yeah, sure. I think I actually did research to see if they were
Chicago alligators,
sewers,
like
and they said
York.
no.
Damn it.
I could have told you that.
Truly, I'm shocked.
Neither am I. But yeah, like so I all this is to say that I've been thinking about Vampire the Masquerade a lot recently. Not the reason for the episode. I just think about horror a lot, but like Vampire the Masquerade is probably 5th edition specifically. It's the only one that I've actually actively played out like any more than one session because God, the rules are just so much better. Like Vampire the Masquerade definitely has a lot of those horror elements that really work well, again, because you, the player, are the powerful one. You are the horror for someone else. You know, the only horror for you is that a bigger vampire comes down and says, "Goodbye, bitch," and then you die. Or the hunters, but like, you know, are those really terrifying, or
it's more of like a fuck factor?
Yeah.
They rock up and you go, fuck.
Oh, well, there goes my whole life. Time to start anew.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be like that sometimes, don't it?
Yeah, you know, sometimes the Pinkertons just rock up at your door and then you don't really know what to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like that guy that leaked the cards 2 weeks early, and then Wizards of the Coast said, "Hey, yo, Pinkertons, go get that guy." Wow.
You know, they could have just asked instead first.
Or could have just taken legal action and instead of sending Pinkertons.
Yeah, they could have just emailed the dude, call him. It didn't even need threaten. Like, he bought it from them. That's the real
horror element.
Like, he was fine. I just love all the Red Dead memes now. People are like, "Oh, they're coming for the Magic the Gathering cards."
It's just one person being like, "It ain't the Wild West anymore."
Yeah. So we touched on this a bit, but what do you think is a bad way to port over a horror setting? I think, like, you know, we've talked about it a few times, but like making everything just grimdark. You know, everything just sucks. Yep. Nobody's having fun. You know, this guy just gets fucked over because, yeah. Like, I don't know. I like, again, you know, making 5th edition into a grimdark setting does not make it horror. It just makes it grimdark, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
The insanity system. It sucks. It's always sucked. It's never going to not suck in 5e because fuck that, you're a superhero who actually wants to lose their mind. The corruption system, maybe you can make an argument for, but anything sanity related can get in the fucking bin. I don't care how to cure it. I don't care how you can cure it. I don't care that you can't cure it. Fuck you if you use it. Don't like it. Except you, Cardell. Still fuck you, but I like you.
Well, I mean, if you're using it for like a psychological horror, or like cosmic horror or something with like, you know, eldritch creatures, you can use it, and I think it'll work in those type of specific settings, but it's like something that you and your gaming group have to be like,
it has to be
with, and it's
like it has to be curated.
Yeah,
is the thing if you're going to use something like the insanity system. But at rules is written, I don't think the insanity system is very good.
No, they're not good. Well, no, 100%.
My biggest reason why I wanted to get in the bin pretty much universally in anything 5e related is because it once again, it's the thing that I brought up before, where it's basically saying, congrats, now your character has to talk with a permanent stutter because you have a level of insanity. And, you know, if you make a character, like I've made a character who has a stutter. I used to have a stutter. I don't like stuttering unless I'm in the headspace, like if I'm playing that specific character, to have a stutter. or to like constantly talk like you're on the verge of a panic attack. At some point you want to just say, hey, the monster's around the corner, and I really don't want to have to say it like an idiot right now, so that's what we're at. Well, and then again, you sort of break the social contract, and then
it's the taking away the player's agency. And once you break that social contract, everybody's like, oh, well, it's free game then, huh?
Yeah. So I just don't. Yeah, I think I look. I want to play Call of Cthulhu, but that's something I'm really gonna have to reckon with, because on some level I'm just gonna be like, I don't want to do this. Like I don't.
I mean, if I ever run Call of Cthulhu, I would probably just change it to be more like Blade's system for the trauma.
I mean,
because it's just.
I heard the new version like is really good. Like I haven't played whatever Call of Cthulhu.
They made a new version, TBH.
I did not either.
Or whatever the new like. It's actually, I think it's also called 5th edition. But it's like the but it's has nothing to do with 5e D&D. It's like actually their 5th edition of Call of Cthulhu. I think it's right now their most popular
Call
version.
of Cthulhu is pretty old.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I think it's their actual like.
Oh, they have a 7th edition.
Or that's what it is. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it with Vampire. I'm sorry.
It was like, damn. Yeah, Vampire's on its 5th edition.
Yeah, Vampire's on its 5th. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is on 7th edition. Apparently, everyone's saying the 7th edition is like the best version to get into.
Well, I will look into that.
Yeah.
And we will talk about that.
Yeah, it's funny because I played in, I think it was a fantasy Call of Cthulhu game. So even then it was really weird, and I specifically was like, all right, so it says here there is dark magic and all this shit. Yeah, let me jump into that. And how it worked was anytime and I think this is also how it works in Call of Cthulhu, anytime you do something occult or evil Cthulhu magic, your sanity gets, decreased.
Depleted. Yeah,
it keeps depleting, and then basically once you hit that like threshold, then your character is insane and you have to start over and make a new character. I think I was able to like cast a couple of spells without going insane just because of God rolls somehow. I don't remember, and I was like, this doesn't feel like Call of Cthulhu at all. This feels like worse D&D.
Wow. I mean, yeah, you being in a fantasy setting makes that.
But I'm also not a huge fan of the Call of Cthulhu, like the normal Call of Cthulhu setting. Like it's like 1920s. I think. I
mean, I would probably. It is 1920s. Yeah, I would probably put it a little bit further in the future, probably like the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Because then it feels a little bit more modern, and it's not like hey, wise guy kind of talk. Everybody's in trench coats wearing fedoras.
That's an aesthetic.
It's Tony Mozzarella over here. Go get him, boys.
That doesn't mean that you can't be the aesthetic in the 70s and 80s. You're just a little bit of a weirdo.
Okay, Tony, you don't have to talk like that now, dude. It's 1980. We're fine.
Why you judging our talk, bud? What are you trying to say? Why you disturbing me in front of my spaghetti?
I'm just thinking that you need to modernize your vocabulary and how you speak.
You can modernize these nuts. I'm trying to pull my gun out of this play and cap your ass.
That's a little bit more modernized.
I jumped 40 years to get that joke.
This is the fucking This is the if anyone watches like 6 seconds or Shofu or Scoot or any of them. Anyone who does like the Pokemon ciphers, they did the thing where because Shizzy's Jamaican and Scoot is just a normal black dude, he was just pretending to do patois, and at some point Shizzy was like, we don't make those sounds. And just, every time Josh is doing that Brooklyn accent and me going, we don't make those sounds.
What do you mean? Like at the pasta with the pizza? I don't understand. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
Jesus.
Anyway.
Couldn't even at least do the gabagool like anything else.
I know. The gabagool. I know what you mean. If you unironically say gabagool, I have no fucking respect for you.
Why you gotta hurt my gabagool like that? I don't understand.
God bless. Dear Lord. So yeah. So
how about the Mets?
I know the Mets, right? It's all about the Mets.
The Mets, baby.
The Mets, baby.
So one of the things that I've realized over the years is that like, so there are a few ways that you can do the horror. I do understand like why White Wolf wanted to be like, oh yeah, it's the storyteller's job, because they wanted to make it atmospheric, you know.
The storyteller.
But it's like, by curating the horror experience there, you completely take away the power of the player, you know. You're like, the player is not, I know the storyteller. The player is now just a vessel to tell the story and not have them do anything.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
they don't have any agency.
Well, because going back to the agency thing, I was trying to, I didn't end up finishing earlier. Isn't that kind of somewhat of the point for like horror, where like I don't agree with taking players' agency normally, but like in a horror, there's a little bit of that you're giving up to have this experience, right?
So that's
True.
That's where the whole, your players have to be going along with it and curating that experience, because like, I'm not going to come to you guys and be like, hey, we're going to go play D&D, and then I just reveal that it's a horror game.
Yeah, you're not just going to be like, all right, so what's everybody's X cards? A spider, gore, torture. Oh man, that was my entire adventure, guys. I guess we're just going to have to plow through it real quick.
I guess we're already at the end. Cool, you're fighting a lich. Go. But we're level 1. Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
We skipped all the other stuff so you could be here today. Yeah, so they're like, you have to curate that experience, which is like, I don't think taking away the player's agency through the sanity mechanics in like Call of Cthulhu, or at least the older editions, is the way to go. I think that having the trauma system that Blades has is the better way to do it, because the player still has agency, but they still have to deal with the trauma. Like, you're not forced to have a stutter, you're forced to act out whatever thing you specifically decide to have. Like, I had a character that had a fear of ones because I literally rolled like 17 ones that night.
Jesus.
It was a really bad
Hugh.
night. Yeah, I know, right? Poor boy. He traumaed out like twice in 2 sessions.
You traumaed out twice. I couldn't manage to trauma out once. So salty. How come Q got all the trauma?
I feel like this is something that doesn't. Anyway. So like, having that agency over what happens to your character, I think, is more important than being like, LOL, fuck your character, this is horror setting. You know, like, obviously it has to be something that the player will sit there and go, hey, I want to do this. And you can be like, no, that doesn't really fit what happened to your character. Please be like, you know, a little bit, like, just be a little bit more specific, or go along more with like, again, the reason why he was afraid of ones is because I rolled so many ones and got to the point where he couldn't look at his lockpicks. So like, that makes sense, because like, actually another thing is that most of the rolls that he failed were lockpick rolls.
Oh yeah.
So like, it was a lot of, oh hey, look, here's all these ones, the lockpicks look like ones, oh fuck.
My God.
So like, it very thematically correct, not correct, but like thematically that trauma makes sense. You know, obviously that's more what I'm saying. It has to thematically make sense. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, yeah, my character has a fear of flies. Why do they have a fear of flies?
I think something that helps with getting some of that horror vibe is taking. So this is a tricky fine line that you have to sort of weave and tightrope walk on, but you can take away a character's agency without taking away the player's agency. And I think that's a big key to it. So like, you and the GM, and obviously, ideally, every player's doing this. You and the GM are agreeing that like, you're going to, like, rather than thinking about the character as you and embodying them as much, you kind of think about the character as like your little child pawn that you're running through the scenario. And you and the GM are agreeing, hey, we're gonna fuck with my kid, but me as the player,
maybe
if I have to,
you're just gonna bully the shit out of my child.
We're gonna bully the shit out of this child, because that's better, I guess.
It's better than the other wording. That's for certain.
Sure.
Hello, Pinkertons.
So, but, then you as the player are like, me and you are on the level. If I say, all right, reel it back as a person, then you reel it back. But if my characters are saying reel it back, don't actually. Like, I'm not engaged. Like, if my character's freaking out and having a bad time, that's not me engaging the safeguard. If I say bananas, that's me engaging the safeguard. That's kind of that fine line. What?
You just reminded me of Baby Driver when the bad man himself, Kevin Spacey, just goes bananas and blows someone's head off with a shotgun.
Okay, nope, not where my brain was at for sure.
He just goes bananas and just fucking destroys somebody.
Okay.
And then he gets his head run over.
Maybe it should be pineapples instead.
That works.
Apple pen.
Pina colada.
But yeah, it can be a little tricky, but I think that's a big part of it. Is playing in more of what's it called? Playing in more of a director's stance instead of an actor's stance.
I feel like that also plays into the whole you choose what traumas your character, but not
right.
Like like, oh, I get to choose this, but like my character still traumas out. Like I don't have any choice in the matter.
Yeah, and also you as a player, if you want to go on a fucked up roller coaster ride, then if you have arachnophobia and you say your character has arachnophobia and you go point at the GM and go buck wild, big boy, then
just
all
fuck
right.
me up, fam.
Yeah, fuck me up, fam. You can, because that's an option.
Yeah.
Like,
If
ever
you say
seen
fuck
Lord
me
of
up,
the
fam, then the
Rings?
GM goes, okay.
Hear me out.
Big mommy spider.
What do you
see,
think?
man?
It's like, I hate
And that
spiders, and
statement
I'm afraid of things that are
Big
taller than
mommy.
me. I can work with this.
Listen, yeah, sometimes you gotta say
I mean, it's
Speaking of
also
horror, hey
worth-
Sam, what's your fucking your catchphrase on Discord?
which one?
What?
The one in all of them.
Where are the monster girls?
Yeah, there it is.
Eh.
Yes,
I mean,
that
listen,
one Scooby Doo
listen.
movie.
Listen,
Where are they,
yeah, seriously, where's the xenomorph? Tell me.
Ooh.
Hold on, I gotta go
See,
on
we have a
incognito
Geiger
mode
fan
real
over here.
quick.
Listen, I'm a fan of a lot of things. Okay.
No.
What that extra tongue mouth do?
Yeah, what that
One
extra
beat.
mouth do. Yeah,
Smiley
and
face.
it is also worth pointing out that you should establish ahead of time. If I'm repeating what you guys already said, then I guess I'll just stop talking. But establish ahead of time the kind of horror you're doing.
Yeah. Well,
In
so,
your game.
So that's part of why the first topic was what's your preferred type of horror, because there's so many fucking types.
Right. Yeah.
My
Preferred type of horror is none.
that's what Matt
Hey,
said.
same here.
I'm not. Yeah, not big on it. Unless I get well.
Well, I said dark fantasy because it's
Yeah, I guess if you consider I like the kind of horror when it's I like the sort of gory, visceral, exceedingly violent kind of thing. I'm
That's
fine
like-
with that.
That's kind of slasher-esque. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I'm okay with slashers, but I'll watch.
like you like Saw.
Not that I have.
I'm assuming.
No, I
I
don't.
don't like Saw.
I don't know about Saw.
Saw's a little too
But,
much in that direction for me. I'm gonna be honest.
Saw's a little
It's too torture porn.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the context with Saw makes it a little weird for me. But I'd be willing. I haven't seen it, but I'd be willing to watch Friday the 13th more than I'd be willing to watch Children of the Corn or The Exorcist. Those I am very much not on board with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not for that supernatural horror.
Well, actually, I guess I do also like thrillers because I like Alien, the first one.
The supernatural horror is what you're saying that you don't like, really, because
Sure, yeah, I guess that's
because it's haha, this is the unknown. I don't like this. Please.
I
leave
do.
me
I
alone.
do have limits on. I'm not a body horror. I have limits on too. I can't.
It
Low
depends-
ceiling for body horror
depends
for
on-
me. Yes, yeah. The Thing is,
Oh,
I have
I
not
don't
seen
know
the
that.
Thing, but the bits of the Thing I have seen, I'm whoo boy, that's a lot.
I admire the
actually really wanna
puppetry,
rewatch
but
The
yeah,
Thing.
I cannot.
I
Watch
do
that
admire
shit.
the puppetry. That's true.
Like, damn,
Yeah,
that
but The
looks
Thing
so
is quite a
real.
lot.
Excuse me while I throw up real quick.
The thing is very cool, though. I'm not gonna lie.
I have a quick story.
It's a really
about the
good idea
thing.
for monster.
Yeah. Oh fuck it. I think it'd be a thing that can literally be anything. Like fuck.
Yeah. I have a quick story about the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to watch that in one
The
of my
Rock
college
Man or the
courses,
monster?
Yes.
and there was someone that Luna and I both know, who neither of us particularly like, who I find infuriating, in fact. And I find him so infuriating that we were watching the thing, and I looked over at him, and I kept doing this, or I would just kind of peek. I'm just like, this motherfucker. And every 2 seconds, something happened. He'd be like, oh, and I hear him go, I'm gonna be sick. I'm just like, fucking throw up, please do it. That'd be
Doing
the funniest thing on the planet.
whitest kids
Please
you know,
just-
Abe Lincoln thing. Like, turn around. He's right behind you. Hey, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. He's just like screaming next to you.
It just, I got some real sick pleasure out of watching him in the front of the class squirm for an hour and a half. And I've seen the thing 3 or 4 times.
Oh, jeez.
So I'm just there like, suffer.
Yeah.
You know what's weird?
I've never watched the
I
thing.
saw the clip
Good movie.
where, like,
Yeah.
the newer, no, I don't want to say the newer one because it's like 10 fucking years old. But the one they did
Newer.
10 years ago,
Oh, the
more recent
prequel?
remake.
Yeah,
that
where
was
the
so
remake-
fucking bad.
well, it's weird because they even said, like, and I watched behind
Wait,
the
it was a
scenes where they
prequel?
used
Yeah.
actual props, but then they covered it with the shittiest CGI
With
ever. And
CG,
it's like,
yeah,
why
yeah,
the
yeah,
fuck? Just use the props. You paid the money to use the props.
If I remember what ended up happening, I forget why they did it, but what happened was they did all the work with the props, and somebody didn't like it or something like that. The director or someone. So they decided to redo it. A lot of it was CGI, but they didn't give the VFX team a lot of time because they didn't push back the release date. So the VFX team had a really like tight window to try and get it all in there.
Yeah.
So that's why it ended up looking like crap.
It's like there's one scene I literally saw it. It's if you type in the thing behind the
Face
scenes.
scene.
Yeah, the face scene where it covers over the dude's face. It splits him in half, and they literally show the prop effect version and then the one in the
Looks better.
movie. And I'm like, oh my god, this is like night and day.
Yeah.
Fuck. Also, bear
Yeah, that's
trap
what happens when you
ribcage.
don't pay-
Fucking hilarious.
That's what happens when you don't pay your VFX team very much and you don't give them a lot of time. That's what
Yeah,
you get.
Disney.
Yeah, Disney. Exactly. Looking at you,
Guys, the Pinkertons.
Disney.
We're gonna send the Pinkertons after us.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
I-
This
I've been
joke is
magic
never
cards.
gonna not be funny for me.
No, it's the
This
fact
joke
that
was this joke ceased being funny for me the first time, but sure, go off.
just the fact that the Pinkertons still exist.
The fact that they
That's really
still
that's the
exist.
crux. Is
That
the fact
part
that
is
the
a little funny,
Pinkertons
I'll
still
say that.
have employment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
fair.
the funny bit. It has nothing to do with the Pinkertons being sent after anybody. It's literally the fact that the Pinkertons still exist, and people are like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
fair
you know,
enough.
the quote unquote detective agency that was actually a civilian militia. Yeah,
Yeah.
hilarious.
This is like the 5th time we've mentioned the Pinkertons this episode.
Yeah, it is.
We're really
I would
dating
like.
this
Yes,
episode.
let's get away from this one now. Yeah, because like I'm thinking about like I've never sat down and watched very many horror movies, but like I've seen bits and I've seen like the Michael Myers most recent movie where Jamie Lee Curtis is really old.
Which one? There's
I
3
saw
of them.
the like most recent, I think. No, maybe the first in the remake trilogy. I
Yeah.
want to say I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
I think it was the first in the remake trilogy.
That's the best one.
And then I've seen bits and pieces of like Scream, the first one. And yeah, like those I'm okay with. So yeah, there's a
Texas
range
Chainsaw
of-
Massacre.
I haven't seen that one. I don't know where I would fall on that one. Just
Oh, well, actually,
Yeah, that's one of the few classic like thriller slashers that I haven't seen.
Where
the
would-
Chainsaw Massacre?
where would it fall under?
It
oh yeah, I've seen the old It movie. I've seen the old and the new It movie.
Hell yeah.
So it is what I would call a psychological supernatural thriller.
Yeah.
You see that the nice thing about horror is you can throw all these tags together and it'll somewhat make sense. So like because it has that, you know, so I was discussing this with my partner because we both really like horror. Stephen King is really good about writing horror because he makes it so that it could literally just be anywhere in the US. And that makes it really unsettling and uncomfortable because
But it's always in Maine.
it's always freaking made, but it could be somewhere else. Like she
North
actually
Maine.
brought up North Main instead of South Main. She brought up that like there was someone who had done like a study, quote unquote. I don't remember specifically what, but like that like it could have been in any sewer that these events happened, and that's what really fucks people up, because they're like, oh, now I just associate sewers with the it monster, you know?
Yeah.
So like,
I will say the It remake movies, which I did like, but they definitely tried to be a little more classical horror, I think, than the old like mid-series did. They felt a little different. They felt a little more like they were trying to push it a little.
A lot of the visual stuff was a little bit more. It was a product like so. That's another thing. Like,
boy, do I still hate that fucking spider though.
I love the spider.
Okay, this is
on the show.
Now I'm gonna be the one. No. When I watched that It miniseries, and I think I watched them as like a big weird super.
Well, that's the thing. They put them all into one big movie supercut, and for years I always thought the original It was just a movie.
Just a big long
movie, and apparently, I was told later on, I was like, no, it was a show.
Yeah, so I was watching that, and then it got to the end, and spoilers if you haven't seen It, Pennywise is a big weird spider alien, and I thought that was the absolute dumbest fucking thing on the entire planet, because the entire series, movie, whatever, does all this build up to try and be like Pennywise is a weird, strange, like mythical clown with superpowers. Like, nah, he's just a big spider alien.
And then they just beat it to death.
Fuck, and then they just beat it with a stick to death. I was like,
kids, how to solve all your problems? Just beat it to death.
Yeah.
Beat your
so then with the remake movies, all right, I was like, all right, please with the remake movies, make him not a big spider alien. Do something cooler with it. That idea is fucking dumb. What did they do? Big spider alien with a clown face.
Well, that wasn't his original.
That wasn't better.
I mean, again, spoilers. Isn't his forms the little beads of light or whatever?
Technically, yes. His true form is he's the little bead of light, but he looks like the big stupid alien spider, and I fucking hate how dumb that thing looks.
Well, I think it was just for the end. God, I don't want to say boss fight, but you know what I mean. The ending.
It is for the boss fight. No, you're right. I still hate it. I don't care. I still hate it. Like, you're right, but I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to remember that Pennywise is literally just feeding on people's fears. So like, he was like,
no, I know.
I like thematically it makes sense, because he's like, okay, well, like everything else has failed. So like, what do I do?
Combine them.
I
just wanted him to be like, Cthulhu or something, you know?
I get it, but
no,
you know,
big slimy spider.
You know, I appreciate it.
Yeah, he was better. He was better in the remakes. He was more interesting looking design wise in the remakes for sure. But still,
Skarsgård also is a fantastic actor.
So good.
True.
Is horribly unsettling. Also, some of the cinematography is fantastic. So they're
fantastically uncomfortable.
Because so you I forget the exact terminology, but so with the scene where he's dancing, you know, usually when you stabilize the camera on an actor, you stabilize it on their whole fucking body. They just did it on his head.
It made it look like his whole body. It was so funny.
Very strange.
A lot of people memed on it though. That one scene.
Of course they did. But here's the thing, Matt. Those people are also probably just as desensitized to horror as I am. Where I have now gotten to the point
that, or it's a coping thing.
Yeah, or a coping thing. So like I when I look at horror, I'm like, damn, that's a great practical effect, or the cinematography here is great, or you know, the atmosphere is great. Like me and my partner watch horror things all the time, and we're usually like, yeah, the first half of that was fantastic, and then it just went downhill because they were like, here's the monster, and it's like, well, you were doing something great with the atmosphere.
So Sam, how about Barbarian though?
Listen, Barbarian again, it literally has that problem where the beginning of the movie is fantastic. It is unsettling. The cinematography is great. It's a very real thing that can happen to someone. It just feels totally uncomfortable. And then I will be honest, we started laughing because of the third actor being introduced and him just being such a fucking sleazeball. I just he was so bad, it was so funny. And then like the later half of the movie is like, oh, the monster's just out and about, and like, yeah, sure, you know, we have rules for them now, but like before, you know, the last second of the first half of the movie was fantastic. You know, you're like,
Why she gotta have her titties?
Listen, there's a whole lot of issues with that.
I want to ask something. Are you guys afraid of clowns? Because I feel like I'm like the only person in the universe who's like, no, I fucking love clowns. I think they're just, I think they're funny.
So I don't love clowns.
I don't think they're funny, but
I don't find them scary.
No.
I think that the problem is that, you know, especially in the East Coast of the US, we had that year of just clowns everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And everyone was like, why are there clowns? Bro. And they just kept showing up, and it's like, oh yeah, did you guys hear about the new clown sighting over in Rhode Island?
Fuck, did I ever tell you guys about the time I got followed home that year with a clown? I was driving home from work, and like I just happened to look, the car was like right up at my tail, and I'm like, what the fuck is this dude doing? I look in my rearview mirror, it's person in a horrifying, like scary clown mask, and they're literally like headbanging, looking like with the windows down, blasting metal. And I'm like, I did the double take, I pulled over, and then they sped past me. And I'm like, well, thank God I don't have to deal with that today.
Oh, who's the clown from the racing game?
Yeah,
Sweet Tooth.
that's
Thank you. You experienced a Sweet Tooth moment.
Fuck.
That's all.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the factual? And it was just a normal, like, shitty sedan too. Like, it wasn't even like a big car. I just thought it was just some normal old asshole like behind fucking tailgating me.
So I live in Sleepy Hollow, which is you know, I come from a place famous for horror. Let me tell you, we handled the clown thing in the most Sleepy Hollow way imaginable.
I'm not surprised.
Because there were groups of kids hiding out trying to jump the clowns.
Oh my fucking
yeah. Hollow baby.
You're like, egg him.
Yeah.
No, bro, dude, like, so someone got chased by a clown, and apparently they chased the wrong fucking kid.
Oh no.
Because you saw groups of like 5 or 6 kids, like, you know, not kids, I say, like 17, 18-year-olds just chilling in places, hoping that someone came out of nowhere. Like, they'd be in the weird spots too, like, and yeah, the clown thing very quickly became a non-issue when,
I'm sorry, fucking with them.
when you've got 40, 50 kids ready to square up with fucking random goobers wearing clown masks.
It was so bad. People were running them over.
Yeah.
In cars. People were like, they would just be a clown walking in the middle of the road with balloons, and someone's like, no, I ain't dealing with this today. I've seen a horror movie.
So
fucking have the dash camera too, so you just see this dude's body just fucking going over the car.
Fuck. We should not be laughing about this. Anyway.
We shouldn't know.
I mean,
so that is a key thing.
Yeah.
That I do have to bring up. Playing a horror game is really difficult when your players are so desensitized to horror, because it just exists all around them, to the point where they're running over clowns with their cars because
goddamn internet.
I've seen a horror movie. I know how horror movies work. You have to, it's that suspension of disbelief and all of that. You know, you have to play a character in the horror movie. You can't just be like, oh, well, clearly, you know, this is the scene of a horror movie, this abandoned house in the middle of the fucking like woods that's been abandoned for like 30 years and someone was murdered here. Clearly we shouldn't be here, and you just fucking leave.
You just fucking,
yeah, well, there goes the whole game, because you know the teenager had a fucking spine and went, wait, no, fuck this, bye.
Yeah, no, this ain't worth it.
Like, what am I gonna get, some cooch? No.
There's other cooch.
I'd love to see like a horror game, like a horror TTRPG, and you're like, wait, it's like, oh, you see something going down the trail, and you're like, oh wait, this game takes place in Texas. Pulls a shotgun out of the trunk. Let's see what it is, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just it now, and that could be interesting. It's like, oh, so the horror game is literally just, hey, I'm a guy that has dealt with this shit for ages because I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Just survive, kind of like, oh man, I didn't figure out that my wife was replaced by a Sasquatch. Don't know why I did that specifically, but like you
I
know,
mean, it happens.
It happens.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, now the
okay.
Sasquatch is killing me because I didn't realize it fast enough. You know, there could be things like that, but like, yeah. That could be an interesting horror game. It's more about figuring out who's a cryptid. You're a cryptid detective. Excellent.
I started banging my wife, and then she made gorilla noises.
Right. And then I noticed
became
that,
concerned.
And then I noticed she had a lot more hair than usual.
Also, her feet were huge.
Just
What them feet do?
Oh no.
No, man.
Cease.
Cease.
And then you got the extra
Absolutely
thumbs.
cease.
No,
You're
I'm
welcome.
good. No, I'm good.
So anyway, I do think we covered this already, but this is my last question that I had written down for my notes. Do you think that making more interesting monsters, such as like cryptids, Wendigo, we've already mentioned, is a good way to actually like accentuate that horror, like having something that's just like a little bit more otherworldly and not just basic magic man with magic stick?
Yeah.
Like I think that having God, wow, I just died. Hold on, I'm gonna have to do some Googling.
I mean, something I think that could be super helpful is looking up cryptids of other cultures that are not your own
absolutely
and taking from. There's a particularly weird Mexican cryptid who's a tiny man with a very, very big sombrero.
Yes.
Stalks young girls because he wants to like bang them or whatever.
Jesus.
And he leaves dirt on the windowsill for some reason and like serenades them and shit. He's very strange. I cannot think of his name.
There's also the
Very
donkey
strange
one.
little dude.
It's like there's a donkey one. I'm forgetting the specifics.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You mentioned the little man. It reminded me of the donkey. I think it's like missing a head or it's on fire or something. I don't remember it exactly. But like taking other cultures' cryptids is also a very good way to like be like, hey, yeah, maybe not most of Japan's. I'm gonna be honest. Some of them are just fucking goofy. But like
Some of them are also Japan's have gotten too well known.
that some of them, there are a lot that
Fucking
are not
yokai watch.
right.
I do
Goddamn.
love that umbrella though.
Yeah, no. So that's another, like, that goes in with what I was saying earlier. Like, you're kind of a cryptid detective, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that my umbrella, because I haven't used my umbrella because I live in fucking Texas, it was actually a
My
monster.
umbrella's trying to kill me.
Like, it's just kind of a common household item, and you're like, wait, hold on. I've
There's
been murdered by an umbrella. But
there's an Inuit cryptid that are like weird half dog people, sort of werewolf dudes who just have a vendetta against all like Inuit tribes people.
fuck?
They're kind of metal. Yeah, they're like snow wolf werewolf people. It's a whole thing. There's also the Yule lads, but not the Yule lads themselves. The Yule lads' mother is metal as shit. Grimhilda or whatever the fuck her name. What is her name? She has a crazy name. She's like a crazy Baba Yaga ass.
Baba Yaga
like,
is just good to use too.
Over the top.
Like well
What is her
known,
name?
but you know, Baba-
Grilla. That's her name. Grilla. She's very cool.
How do you spell that?
And also, Grilla. Oh
Yeah.
jeez. There's an accent over the Y, but Gryla.
Yeah, I found them.
The Yule lads themselves are kind of goofy, but Grilla terrifying.
Yeah, no, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, jump
mean-
into the pot. Oh, that's good imagery.
You can throw in my favorite Puerto Rican folktale, Chupacabra.
Yeah.
True.
Very creepy little goblin lizard dog thing.
Yep.
Can we talk? All right.
Proboscis.
There's never been
Sometimes.
any pop culture depiction of Chupacabra that I've ever liked. Like, it's in Fantastic Beasts bin. It's in like everything. It's always in something, and I'm like, no, get in the bin. It looks like shit.
I will say that another thing that's D&D already has is mind flayers, but specifically intellect devourers are pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Just because it's a brain on 4 legs, and it's just I will eat you.
God, I do really like Wendigo as a monster.
Yeah,
It's
it's just overall fantastic. I gushed about it the other day, so I'll let you go. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well, like, so you got to be very specific with your Wendigo. You
Yeah.
either need the classical deer skull antlered one that's like 12 feet tall, and it's just
That's the one I
unkillable.
Yep.
Or you need not the one from Until Dawn, but
The cannibal one.
Yeah, so there's
I prefer the antler one because like it is absolutely like it still has the same origin. You know, evil spirit possessed someone that ate another human because cannibalism bad. But like it's just I don't know, there's something creepier about like you see the antlers and you're like, oh, it's just a fucking deer. No, that's not a deer.
Yeah, no,
that ain't a deer.
Oh. Ever heard of the not deer?
Yes, I threw that at my party.
I love the not deer.
Yeah, the nope deer.
They're literally called not deer, and it's like a weird. Most people speculate it's probably just deer suffering from chronic wasting disease.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird stories of deer like walking around on two legs and stalking people.
Yeah, they are. Hold on, someone made.
It's mostly
it's
like a big Midwestern Eastern thing.
Yeah, it's nightmare fuel for sure.
Oh yeah.
They just look like normal deer, but they just act like weird people and they stalk you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the theory being that when deer get chronic wasting disease, they lose their fear of human beings, so they'll follow people or like attack people unprompted.
Oh no.
Yeah. That chronic wasting disease, that's a real thing.
Yes.
That's an actual problem.
I think
fucking prions.
I think from my like family background, because we're like Eastern European as fuck, vampires were very big, very popular.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Dracula.
Yeah. Vampires have gotten too popular now. That's a problem. Although, if you look up, basically every culture has some form of a vampire,
Yeah.
and if you start looking into other versions of vampires, there's some pretty heavy metal vampires out there.
Oh yeah.
Like I think the Hungarian one it basically looks like an Oni or an orc, like fucking big, giant fanged motherfucker with devil horns.
Nice.
Yeah. Fucking metal.
Yeah. This is really just an excuse to talk about monsters.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best. I do think the best way is to take shit from other cultures that are not the one that your group is primarily made of is a good way to spice things up.
Oh, I mean, shout out to the Headless Horseman himself. The thing that's clearly a Doulahan, but
Yes,
is never referred to as a Doulahan. It's very funny.
Isn't Doulahan like a super German, like
Irish?
Irish? Oh, it's Irish. Oh.
Yeah, the Doulahan is the Irish embodiment of death that rides around on a horse or a chariot that collects souls and heads because it doesn't have a head of its own. Or if it does have a head, it's sitting next to it on the cart. But the Headless Horseman was a German Hessian soldier that got his head taken off by a cannonball, and they buried it away from his body as punishment. So he goes around looking for heads to take off. He's literally a Doulahan. It's very funny.
Yeah.
He is now. It is worth pointing out though that the original story is not actually that weird or creepy necessarily. It was just Ichabod Crane getting followed by some guy who was fucking with him, and he like literally threw a pumpkin at him.
He did, yeah.
So the original story did not have quite the weird like horror roots Doulahan thing. It kind of became that later.
Well, so
for whatever reason,
the big mystery is that you don't actually know if it's Braun or not. You think it is. It might be Braun Van Brunt because he's like, oh yeah, look at that, Ichabod Crane totally fucking disappeared. Gotta wonder how that happened. But the big, it's funny, right? Because I kind of know the story. They only taught it to us every Halloween. Yeah, so there's a lot of speculation, but he's a fucking Doulahan. There's actually a really, really, really stupid but really fun series of young adult novels about Sleepy Hollow, and how like Ichabod Crane was a weird Satanist who like
what the fuck?
Who killed the mayor, who was the Van Tassel like patriarch, and he fused him with a demon called Akophalos. and that became this Headless Horseman.
What the fuck?
And there's like weird sirens in it, and at the end, like an actual demon shows up, and the Headless Horseman fights the demon in a junkyard. It's crazy. But it was really entertaining because I remember reading it being like, none of this is real. There's no coffee shops on that street.
Fun fact, you could fight a dual Han in 5e thanks to Van Richten's Guide to Everything. Ravenloft.
We are not sponsored by Wizards. We are not paid to promote their products.
Did you watch this? Did you watch the Sleepy Hollow show at all?
I did, and I hated every second of it.
Oh, I kind of liked it.
Because I literally went, I know what street they're talking about. There's no Starbucks on that fucking street.
That's a weird.
Okay,
sure.
Bro,
I mean, I guess.
I shit you not. I had like 3 or 4 times. Because
it's very weirdly specific beef to have with something.
Well, it was a lot of that, like none of the town, like they didn't use any of the town.
Oh, what the fuck?
For like they used the weird back roads because like I know those back roads.
The cemetery or anything near there?
Yes, they used a few shots at the cemetery,
yeah.
and they used mostly like skyline shots, like my high school's in those.
Okay.
But yeah, they just like they didn't rely on almost any of the actual geography of the area. And they just threw a bunch of really weird shit in there that I was like, literally, what is the point?
I will say the lore started to get out of hand as it
started to get
weirder and weirder.
Ichabod Crane pulled out his gun?
Oh, yeah, Ichabod Crane's a soldier.
Yeah, he's a former soldier.
Yeah, he's like a badass dude.
And you might be saying, Isaiah, but you're like the young adult novels that where he's a Satanist. Yes, because that did not take itself seriously at all. It was Pulp Fiction at its best.
This whole love triangle with him and the dual Han.
Very seriously.
The girl, I forgot her name in the story.
Oh, yeah, the Van Tassel. Oh my God, what is her name?
I don't know.
Bro. But yeah, no, I didn't like how like that the Headless Horseman is the Red Rider of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I was like, get this shit out of here.
Yeah, when it started to get into the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, it got a little like weird.
Yeah, and then he had like the weird spike on his head or something. Like
fucking like unicorn?
It was very goofy. Yeah, it is goofy.
It went in like a weird direction.
So yeah, Sam,
I did watch it though.
Yeah, no, I listen. I love talking about horror. I could talk about horror all fucking day, but we are fast approaching a completely different station. I'm gonna redirect this to the end.
Shibuya Station, you might say.
God, I wish. So this has been Sessions Canceled Podcast. I did not do the thing at the beginning because I totally forgot because Josh wasn't here. Josh, would you like to take us away with a spiel?
All right, here's what you're gonna do. All right, you're gonna go in your room. You're gonna clear out your closet. You're gonna set up a wardrobe with a nice, like mirror, something like that. Like mirror. All right, and I need you. You're gonna take your phone. You're gonna put it on the pedestal. Around the pedestal, you're gonna light a bunch of candles. You're gonna make a shrine to us. You're going to pray to the dark gods to increase our follower numbers because that's the easiest way to do it. And quite frankly, I'm feeling lazy. So yeah.
Everyone, chat with me.
Or alternatively, follow or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and follow us on Twitter and leave a comment if you feel like it.
The usual.
Yep.
Yeah.
You should try the Dark Shrine though. I'm just saying.
Now chant with us. Chant.
I can say. Anyway.
Hookah chaka, hookah chaka.
Right.
Yeah, the ultimate chant.
That has been Sessions Canceled Podcast for the week. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
I can't
I was
stop.
just thinking. Cut that out. I was gonna say. I was just thinking that we were talking about Resident Evil 4. We have to go out doing the. Peace, y'all.